for the most part, we've checked all the big milestones. So manufacturers, wholesalers, and the large dispensers all had to be ready by August and then November, respectively. So the only upcoming regulatory milestones at this point are really for the small dispensers. Those the FDA said if you have 20 or less employees, you were exempt for, I believe it was 2 years, where the rest of us got 9 months or a year. So that's the biggest milestone coming up. That's a statutory one. I'd say for the rest of the industry, it's really, we're in a state of stabilization. I will say we kind of went live with a whimper in August of last year, which was a good thing. So there's some, when you move 5 billion products a year, you're going to have issues, and even a 0.05% issue is going to be a lot of products. So, those are the two things: to stabilize and make sure our small dispensers are ready. There's two things. One, a lot of these independent small dispensers may not even have solutions. So if you're not going out and buying your own solutions, you don't need a GLN, you don't need the fancy integrations. If you do, or if you make that decision to go get a third-party integrator at the last minute, it could take a month to 2 months to get that set up. So you're running a risk that, your idea of where you thought you were going to be from a compliance solution, it doesn't come to fruition until after the deadline date. The other thing I'll say, just as a theme, and we've been talking to independent pharmacists for years now about getting ready, is, these people are pharmacists first, businessmen second, and then quality and regulatory folks 18th. And so the biggest thing for them to be ready is, having an SOP, like having a document that says, I only buy from authorized trading partners. That continues to be the biggest risk for them. Less on the, can you get to your DSCSA data, and more, did you document how you're compliant? And that continues to be the message we send, and I know other groups are sending it as well, is, look, here's some templates, here's an SOP, download it, put it in your drawer. If you get audited, pull it out. So I think that's going to be a persistent theme as we prepare for the upcoming milestone here, as we continue to educate and say the same message we've been saying for years. The biggest thing is what we call verification router service, which the majority of the manufacturers have signed up for. And that's a way for the pharmacists, and they can either get it from their own third-party solution provider, like an access to the VRS, or I believe Pulse and ABP has a tool that's free for access, where you can just type in the serial number and the information about the product, and it'll ping the manufacturer and say, hey, is this good? That's one of the most powerful tools that we've seen deployed. it was part of some of the counterfeit investigations over last year were identified because of this ability to do this verification. So that's the biggest tool. The other thing, they can always default to calling their customer service reps for their wholesalers. We're here to help them too through that. But yeah, the VRS is as an artifact of DSCSA, it's the most powerful tool that there is out there. Yeah, we've actually started looking at this, we being a handful of us in the industry, just starting to peel the onion on this, because NDC 12 or NDC is everywhere, from labeling to DEA records to the entire backbone of the financial pharmaceutical system. So, specific to that question, it's going to be, all of these point of sale or point of dispense systems are going to have to know how to read a different barcode. The current barcode on the drug today, you cannot fit a 12-digit NDC in there. So you're going to have to go to what will most likely be a 2D, since they're on there already, or a different type of barcode. And so all of these systems and software vendors are going to have to change their software to read a different barcode, read a 2D, know what that NDC 12 is. And then as we get into the complicated nature of this, is like, what was that NDC 12 before it became a 12? So lots of work to do there. And we're just starting to scratch the surface. NDC 12 is like Y2K. The only difference is we have to do this together versus in an individual company vacuum. So it's going to be huge. And so we've always talked about this. It's going to be the state boards of pharmacies that get out there to the individual dispensers. The FDA doesn't have capacity, bandwidth, especially most recently, definitely bandwidth to go touch dispensers. But from what we've been seeing, working with NABP and even the individual states, they're going to be auditing very similar to the FDA. In fact, if the FDA licensure ever comes up, they'll have a standard on what those requirements are. But it goes back to what I said earlier. The dispensers just need to focus on, do you have your minimal set of SOPs and documents? Do you know how to get to your DSCSA data? Very simply, when asked the question, if you don't get data, what do you do? Have an answer, because I think that's probably a blind spot from a lot of these dispensers. Like, well, I know how to get my data. Well, yeah, but what if you got a product and Cencora didn't give you the data and you dispensed it? like that's a conversation you don't want to find yourself in without having a document that says, why did you do what you did? So that's still the same theme. There's some things there too. I mean, if you are using a third party, I mean, back to your question, document, the retention policy, just say, hey, I'm using so-and-so third party. I'm storing the data for 6 years. I mean, that checks all the compliance boxes for you. But again, it's all about documenting what you're doing and then making sure you follow what you documented. What we've seen since our go live, August of last year, there's really two areas that are creating, I would say, confusion and consternation with the dispensing community, big and small. One is around we. So those are those NDCs where the manufacturer had an issue and the FDA gave them extra time. We actually got a we ourselves because if we were having issues with manufacturer getting us data, we wanted to keep product flowing. The challenge the dispensers are having are what's on a we. Because if you get a total product and there's 50 items and you're missing data for one, well, maybe it's on a we and that's okay. So that continues to be one area. And again, we try to publish that information to our customers where we know it, but it's just a persistent challenge. It falls in that stabilization bucket that the industry has to work through. The other one, very similar, is drop ships. If you buy something from me, there are many products that are drop ship only. I mean, the manufacturer has special handling, whatever it is, but they ship it. That information is coming from the manufacturer. It typically comes on a packing slip where there's a URL and you have to download that information. That's frustrating for dispensers because if they've created this fully integrated solution with receiving, it's not going to work because that data may not be flowing through me. Now, there are ways that the industry is working toward a solution where that data can be forwarded through me, but we're not there. We maybe have 200 manufacturers that can do it now out of 500. And again, it's frustrating for the dispensing community, and it's not something we talked a lot about leading up to go live. And those are just the two areas, again, we continue to focus on, and we'll get there. It's just like I said, this is a frustrating law when you're sitting there with product and you're doing the right thing and you don't have data and you're trying to dispense it and you don't know what's wrong. And if you go back 13 different steps and it's the first step, it's really hard to talk through that. So, but again, I think overall we're in amazing shape. I think we're all kind of surprised, even my peers. My friend who's at Cardinal McKesson are saying the same thing. It's been pretty smooth, all things considering that we move 5 billion units a year. And our issues are pretty small.